Amnesia Rebirth is Fictional Games' latest entry in its legendary survival horror series. Back in 2010, Fictional Games released Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which took the gaming and social media world by storm. In 2013, Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs was released, albeit to lukewarm reception compared to Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Fast forward to 2020, and here we have Amnesia Rebirth. For those who are unaware of what these games are about, it pretty much goes like this. You play as a character that wakes up with absolutely no recollection of recent events. You traverse and stumble through the game trying to piece together what exactly is going on, while also encountering some spooky things amidst the darkness that shrouds the long journey ahead. Amnesia Rebirth stays true to the formula as you are thrust into the role of Tazi, an archaeologist who is en route to Africa via a plane with her husband and company. Her plane crashes in the middle of the Algerian desert, and Tazi wakes up amidst the wreckage of the plane, dazed and confused as to what happened and where everyone has gone. I have to say, I enjoyed the slow drip of information and exposition fed to you as the game carries on. The game is chock full of notes and journal entries, as well as voiceovers and cutscenes where you slowly glue all the missing pieces of your fractured memory together. You really feel like you're in Tazi's shoes, and the story is strong enough to keep its hooks into you as you do everything you can to survive Rebirth's haunting set pieces. There's some direct ties to The Dark Descent that will surely please fans of the series, so it's important to note that you'll probably want to play through the first game if you want the bigger picture. Tazi suffers from a condition that causes her to become fearful and hallucinate when completely surrounded in darkness, or when witnessing disturbing events. This is Amnesia's bread and butter gameplay mechanic that has the player constantly figuring out how to find a fine balance between staying in the dark or using limited resources such as matches or lantern oil to light up sources of light that are few and far in between. There are times where Tazi will have to solve puzzles and hide from enemies, all while navigating through the thick darkness and figuring out which light sources are essential to use. If you're not careful, you may find yourself succumbing to your fear, which I was happy to see wasn't an end-all be-all fail state, as I could definitely see how someone could become frustrated when dealing with certain encounters due to the fact that you can't fight back. I did find, however, that as the game dragged on, Rebirth finds itself letting off the gas after the initial few hours and coasting before ramping up to its conclusion. I found that the game slowly devolved into a spooky and linear walking simulator, which was surprising given how excellent of a first impression Rebirth gives when it comes to its initial maze-like areas, which had you going back and forth figuring out some clever puzzles along with some smart enemy placement. As mentioned before, Amnesia Rebirth features some incredibly haunting set pieces. The game can definitely stop you in its tracks in order to soak in the impressive atmosphere. There's nothing particularly fancy about its graphics, however, it manages to nail the art direction and the sense of truly being in Tazi's shoes. One thing I was super impressed with was the sound design. The sound of Tazi's boots scuffing across the rough terrain, the sound of her amulet whirring to life as it paves the way to another area, the ominous ambience in the background. Everything about Rebirth sounds absolutely spot on. It also helps that the voice acting is terrific from top to bottom, which really helps drive the narrative forward. I also enjoyed the small intricacies pieced together by Rebirth's loading screens, as they provided a sort of tranquility in the midst of Rebirth's chaos, all while fleshing out its story even further. The scares are well done, although in terms of spookiness I would say that The Dark Descent still has a beat. The problem with Rebirth's scare factor is that you're constantly being pulled from the immersion. Now I know I praised the voice acting just a moment ago. However, Tazi likes to talk. Like a lot. You're rarely ever fully engrossed with what's going on around you because Tazi doesn't even give you a moment to think. Another problem I saw was that the pacing gets thrown off due to a particular repetitive loop that goes as follows. You stumble around in the dark looking for a puzzle to solve that will take you to your next critical area. After figuring out how to solve said puzzle, you encounter an obstacle, either in the form of the environment itself or a monster. After overcoming said obstacle and solving the puzzle, you are then thrust into a situation akin to Naughty Dog's Uncharted series, where something bad happens or goes wrong, and you find yourself repeating this loop once again. It got old, pretty fast. There's some cheap jump scares sprinkled here and there, but I never really found myself to be truly fearful of the unknown, which was due to the fact that enemy encounters are so few and far in between. And this is what I mean by Rebirth just kind of coasting through before its final acts. Sometimes you'll hear creaks and shuffles around the corner, dreading to pace forward in anticipation of something horrible. Most of the time you will just be flat out bored, because despite the incredible atmosphere, nothing ever really happens. Overall, Amnesia Rebirth feels like it emphasizes more on its narrative rather than its elements of horror. It's not a terrible Frictional Games game, nor is it a bad game altogether. Amnesia Rebirth has some standout moments that really made me feel just as disoriented as its protagonist. The game has some fantastic presentation, the graphics are great, the sound is awesome, and its puzzles can be thought-provoking. However, it falls short on its delivery of horror and tension, which is disappointing because the original revolutionized how both can work in tandem.